I want to go ahead and get to our buddy Chad Brown. Great interview here talking about Colorado and Deion Sanders, talking about the Broncos and the NFL in general. Some great AFC West talk. You can find him literally everywhere. Dude is a hell of a player. He's doing a great job in the analyst game. Chad Brown, everybody, will be right back with us in our cool Christmas sweaters. But now we'll throw it to our interview with Chad. Very excited to be joined by a guy that was a hell of a player. You can at Colorado, part of the only national championship team, even though now with Deion Sanders coming back, they're a lot more, about as relevant as they've been since then. You can catch him talking about the Broncos. I'm going to let him tell you everywhere you can find him because he's all over the place. That's Mr. Chad Brown. Chad, I appreciate you coming on.
Well, thanks for having me on. And I didn't even know you pay attention to West Coast football. So nice to hear the kind words from you.
Yeah, no doubt, man. You know, and when it comes down to it, you know, as a fan of football, as a football purist, I guess, I would love for every region of the country to be good. I would love for USC and the brands out there, and you know, even teams like Oregon State with Jonathan Smith that I thought, you know, really overachieved this year and set the momentum and the pace for next year. I want the West to be good. I want Miami and Florida State to be good. I want the Northeast to be good. Somebody outside of Ohio State and Michigan. That's why the Big Ten's the second best conference, David. But we'll get to that later.
At this point, we'll take second. Wisconsin.
But Chad, I want to start obviously with Colorado and you being, you know, the player that you were there and keeping tabs on that school and how important your alma mater is to you. Getting Deion Sanders and the boost that's already given the program. I said on the show, I feel like I've talked about Colorado more in the past 2 weeks than I've heard anybody talk about him in the past 10 years. What are your thoughts on the hire, and what do you think it means for the university?
Well, what it means is folks like you are talking about Colorado football again. Yep. And it's been 20 years since we were part of the national conversation. So to bring in a coach like Deion Sanders, tip of the cap to Rick George, our athletic director, to recognize he needs to make a big move to bring the attention back to CU's program. You know, getting Deion Sanders does exactly that. So I don't think this is going to be a long-term fit. But I believe in the short term, we've already started to accomplish things that were needed to bring CU back to national prominence. Mm-hmm. The salary that we're paying Deion is now on par with other coaches. The pool of salary for the assistant coaches is now on par with other big-name football schools. This transfer rule, which has really hurt CU since the transfer portal opened up, you know, in similar ways hurt Stanford as well. The administration has made rules to change that. So we're now going to be on a little bit more of a level playing field with the rest of college football. So even if Deion takes off for greener pastures in a couple of years, now the next coach will be able to be in a much better position without some of those roadblocks being in place.
Yeah, it seems like Colorado is no longer bringing a knife to a gunfight anymore when it comes to, you know, not only in conference, and Cone's going to ask you a question about maybe Colorado's future from a conference standpoint, but I want to jump to a team that obviously you're very familiar with, the Denver Broncos, the AFC West. I mean, we've talked to KJ Wright. We've talked to a bunch of different guys that are obviously very vested in the NFL. And even we, going into the year, looked at the AFC West and was like, this is murderer's row. I mean, you could legitimately have every team make the playoff in this division. When you look at the Broncos, and I know you've had injury problems, and it seems like that's everywhere in the NFL, what do you think has been kind of the main problem in getting this team going in Coach Hackett's first year?
Well, let me just address some of the things you just brought up. In the preseason, I was telling people this may be the best division of quarterbacks of all time.
Yeah.
You know, that's when Russell Wilson joined, Justin Herbert and Derek Carr, Patrick Mahomes. And in some ways, this kind of has fallen flat. A lot of that is partially due to Russell Wilson. He has not been very good under center for the Broncos at all. Coach Hackett, new first-time head coach, I think has not utilized Russell Wilson to his best. But I think Pete Carroll and John Snyder up in Seattle are laughing a bit because they saw some of this decline and were able to get players, 5 draft picks in exchange for a player that they didn't see was going to get better, was only going to continue to get worse. Russell Wilson has clearly lost a step or two. And so for him to recapture it in his previous glory, he's got to run the football. But he did that 2 weeks ago and got himself knocked out the football game. So as an older quarterback who's losing physical skills and doesn't have the makings of becoming Drew Brees, a true pocket passer, I'm not sure where the future is for Russell Wilson. But for this season, the Broncos have been an incredible disappointment because of those optimistic expectations going into this year. Tim Patrick, the receiver for the Broncos who was lost for the year with an ACL, said Super Bowl or bust during training camp. This team's not even going to have a winning record, much less Super Bowl or bust. So the amount of injuries have hurt. First-time head coach has hurt. But in the end, this is a lot goes on Russell Wilson's shoulders. But we in the media are also guilty of putting too high of a level of expectations upon a team that just wasn't prepared to meet those level of expectations.
Yeah, and the thing about Russell Wilson, when I think of him at his most dangerous, obviously the run game in Seattle helped, but being able to extend the play not only inside of the pocket with his eyes, but outside of the pocket. I mean, how many times do we see Russell Wilson just kill people on broken plays when it's a scramble drill? Now it doesn't seem like he's elusive as he was, and that's what happens when you get older. I think that's been a problem as well,
yeah. Chad, I want to go back to the Pac-12 for a moment. I had a lot of fun watching Pac-12 football this season. Southern California back in the playoff conversation for the first time in a long time. You look at what Bo Nix was able to do at Oregon. Washington with Michael Penix Jr., even Oregon State this past weekend, very impressive bowl victory. Utah back-to-back champions. It was the most elite football I've seen from the Pac-12 in quite a while. Now we're going to see USC and UCLA both leave for the Big Ten in just a matter of a few seasons. Tim Brando came on here and said he thinks that one of the reasons Deion Sanders took the Colorado job is potentially with the Buffaloes moving back to the Big 12. I wanted to get your thoughts. What is the future of the Pac-12, and what do they have to do to continue this recent success that they've had?
Well, I am on the alumni council for the Pac-12. So a couple times a year, we get a chance to either meet in person with the commissioner or we do a conference call. And obviously, at our meeting just a day before the Pac-12 championship game, things were feeling great within the Pac-12. You listed a lot of those on-the-field success stories for them this year. And they say the reason why they've had so much success is they've gotten school presidents and athletic directors to invest in their football programs, facilities, expanding staffs, recruiting staffs, things like that. And it's paying dividends as far as national rankings go. The loss of USC and UCLA is going to be a blow to the Pac-12, no doubt about that. But the cupboard is not going to be bare. You talked about Washington and Utah and Jonathan Smith and Oregon State making a push forward. He's been building that program steadily for a couple of years out there. I think, yes, the Southern California market is obviously a huge blow to lose those two teams, but there's enough good football left where I don't think it's going to be like we thought earlier this year that Washington and some other schools are going to be leaving, the next schools to leave. I think the Pac-12 is strong enough as a conference now. Whoever they bring in to make it 10, 12 teams again probably won't fit the stature of USC or UCLA, but hopefully they'll add to the overall competitive of the conference. And I left the championship weekend, despite the loss by USC, which eliminated them from the playoffs, feeling good about the Pac-12, where it's going, the investment of money and the resources to move this football back to where it's, again, part of the national conversation. And hiring Deion Sanders to go to the very first part of this call is a big move towards that as well.
Cone, isn't it funny how, like, with this conference realignment, it was like, oh, the Big 12 is going to be dead. Then all of a sudden it's a Big 12 resurgence. Then it's, oh, the Pac-12 is going to be dead. And now the Pac-12 is back. Snip, snap, snip, snap, snip, snap. It seems to me like the dominoes are kind of falling a little bit different than what people thought.
Exactly. The three of us were together at SEC Media Days the moment that it was announced Texas and Oklahoma would leave for the SEC. Well, since that time, it's been announced that the Big 12 is going to get almost half a dozen new schools with Houston and Cincinnati and Central Florida. So, Chad, what schools do you think the Pac-12 should call to replace the likes of USC and UCLA?
I think they still want to play the geography game.
Yeah.
I don't think they want to become the Big Ten with schools spread out all over the country. Yeah. So, schools in San Diego make sense. UNLV makes sense. So there's, schools that fit within the Pac-12 footprints. There's no true, I don't think, leader in the clubhouse right now. The commissioner is going to take his time with this, but I think first and foremost for him is getting the media deal done. And this is the only media deal available for networks for the next 8 years. So the Pac-12 to kind of kick the can down the road on their media deal to bring Deion Sanders to Colorado, which obviously is going to draw a lot of attention. The success of the Pac-12 this season, I think the commissioner has played this media thing really well. I think the Big Ten's getting about $66 million a year per team. The Big 12 is about $33 million a year per team. If the Pac-12 can come in the middle of that those schools are going to be very happy with the commissioner and how he was able to navigate some pretty tricky waters this year.
UNLV is interesting. Just hired Barry Odom and Bobby Petrino as the OC. They've always been kind of sneaky to me out there. It's kind of like Georgia in basketball. How are you not good? I don't understand it. But
Dangerous. UNLV could be dangerous pretty quickly. Well, I'm going to stay out west. Let's go to Lincoln Riley and USC, another Heisman winner, Caleb Williams, but doesn't make the playoff and doesn't win his elusive national championship. Will Lincoln ever win a national championship at USC?
I think he can. I think he can. USC has always gotten tremendous talent from Southern California, obviously a recruiting hotbed. So when folks were talking about can Deion Sanders do what Lincoln Riley has done at USC in just 1 year, I think the cover's far more bare at Colorado than it ever has been at USC. They've had problems with on-the-field coaching. They've had some program problems. They haven't had a problem with talent. So I think Lincoln Riley can bring some structure to a program that has lacked it for quite a bit of time and continue to recruit elite talent out there. And let's face facts. When Caleb Williams is at the Heisman Trophy ceremony, all Gucci suited out, that sells to 17-year-olds.
For sure.
I'm 52 years old. You know what I mean? When I was being recruited, it was a far different landscape. That might not have sold to me. But 17-year-old who Lincoln Riley's sitting on his couch and is talking about Caleb Williams and he's all Gucci suited, that's going to sell. That's going to pay dividends. The glitz and glam of USC, couple that with the track record of Heisman Trophy winners and All-Americans and all the success they've had over there for a long period of time, I don't think USC is too far away from competing year in and year out for a national championship.
USC right now, it's a sexy place to play.
It's always been a sexy place.
Well, right now, I mean, it's Hansel hot right now. Let's be honest.
Wow.
Hey, but I know we're talking about Pac-12. Let's go full landscape here at college football. We got our 4 teams in the college football playoff. Who do you have winning the championship? And has anybody beaten Georgia?
I'll go last question first. No one's beaten Georgia. These other teams, I think they all put up a good fight. I love what Jim Harbaugh has done in Michigan and the physical nature in which they play football, winning up front with the offensive defensive lines, kind of imposing your will, old school football. I love that. But Georgia is just so talented and so far ahead of these programs. I don't think there's any way for anyone to upset Georgia from repeating.
Yeah, I mean, Stetson Bennett, a.k.a. Van Wilder's in year 9 at quarterback. I mean, the dude's playing with house money. But, Chad, man, please tell everybody where they can find your work. We got to get you back on soon. We know the stories in the NFL and college are going to keep pumping. It's evergreen content. But tell our audience where they can find you and your outstanding stuff.
All right, you can always find me at Chad Brown 94 on Twitter. I've got my daily radio show on 104.3 The Fan in Denver. You can always go to the website and listen to my show as well. And then I'm on Compass Media almost every single weekend, either doing college football or NFL football. So if there is a camera or microphone to talk into during football season, chances are I'm doing just that.
That, when you cover the NFL and college, that's a dual threat.
Hey,
five-tool player. Chad, we really appreciate your time. And I do one question before you go. 1990 Colorado, I talked about this the other day. When you're on the sidelines, did you know there was 5 downs, and did everybody just not say anything? Like, nobody say anything to anybody. Let's see if they actually let us do it.
No, there was some conversation, folks who were keeping track of downs. Jay Lewinberg, our center, actually told Coach McCartney on the sideline, we can't spike the ball. That's 4th down. And everyone told him to shut up, and they pointed to the scoreboard and the down markers.
That's right.
So Jay was the one guy, at least in that offensive huddle, who knew what was happening. I knew there were some conversations going on the sidelines. But for this, I will always say karma is an interesting thing. Missouri had a very early version of field turf, which is now prominent in football everywhere, where it was the longer style turf versus that old style turf. And per the manufacturer's instructions, that turf needs to be hosed down before the game to keep the sand that was inside of that turf from coming up to the top. Our coaches recorded 75 unassisted slips and falls by CU players during film review. So on that touchdown drive where we needed the 5th down to score that touchdown, there were 2 plays where Colorado players had the end zone in front of them and just slipped and fell due to the field conditions. So Missouri tried to pull a fast one over on us, and the football gods bit back We still got the national championship, and we won on fifth down.
There it is. Look, karma is a fickle mistress.
And it's always the center.
That's why I said, if somebody ran in, when I was playing or when I was coaching, if somebody ran in, put a gun to my head and said, one player on this team has to do your taxes, and if they get it wrong, you're dead. I'm going straight into the offensive line room, and I'm going straight to the center.
Yep.
That's the only guy I'm trusting to do it, not the quarterback, not even the middle linebacker. Give me the center. They're always the smartest guy in the group. But speaking of the smartest guy in the group, Chad, it's always great to have you on, my friend. Let's do it again soon.
This was a blast. I really enjoyed it, fellas. Have a good one.
Hey, YouTube, what's up? Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you turn that notification bell on. It's the gift that keeps on giving. We're like the Santa Claus of sports podcasts and shows.